She was nameless in the pages of Scripture, but her desperation gave her a story that would be told for generations. The Gospel of Mark introduces her not with a title, but with a burden, a woman who had suffered from a bleeding disorder for 12 long years. 12 years. That's more than 4,000 days of weakness, of pain, of shame, and isolation. She had spent everything she had on physicians, but instead of getting better, she only grew worse. This wasn't just a physical condition, it was emotional, social, spiritual, because under Jewish law, her bleeding made her ceremonially unclean. That meant she wasn't allowed to touch anyone. No hugs, no laying on of hands, no place in the temple. She wasn't just sick, she was cut off. And yet she had one thing left. Not money, not strength, but hope. Faint, fragile, but still burning. Then one day, word spread that Jesus was coming through her town. The healer, the miracle worker, the one who had opened blind eyes and made the lame walk. She had no appointment, she had no invitation, but she had a plan. If I just touch his robe, I will be healed. She didn't need his attention, she didn't need a conversation, she didn't even need him to notice. Just the hem of his garment, that would be enough. So she moved through the crowd, through the fear, through the internal voices saying, what if it doesn't work? Through the shame, whispering, you don't belong here. She pushed past every barrier with trembling hands and a single goal, and she touched it. Instantly, the bleeding stopped. She felt it. Her body knew it. For the first time in over a decade, there was peace in her bones. But Jesus stopped. He turned around and asked, who touched my clothes? For the disciples were confused. The crowd was pressing in from every direction. But Jesus wasn't looking for a name. He was acknowledging a moment, because something unique had happened. Power had gone out from him, and now he wanted the woman to step forward. She could have slipped away. She had what she came for. But healing is more than physical. It's personal. Jesus didn't just want her to be cured. He wanted her to be seen. Trembling, she fell at his feet and told him everything. The whole truth. Not just the act, but the years that led to it. The pain, the isolation, the hopelessness. Jesus listened. Then he said something she had probably not heard in a very long time. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. He didn't call her woman. He called her daughter. He restored her identity before the eyes of the very people who had labelled her unclean. It's easy to read that story and admire her courage, but her courage was born out of pain. She wasn't fearless, she was desperate, and sometimes desperation pushes you toward faith in ways comfort never will. Her story is a reminder that access to God isn't reserved for the qualified. It's open to the broken, the shamed, the ones who feel unworthy, the ones who've tried everything and still come up empty. She didn't wait for the perfect moment. She didn't wait until she had it all figured out. She moved when hope was all she had left. And in that movement, she found what years of striving could never deliver. In your life, you might carry wounds that no one sees. You might be pressing through crowds of expectations, opinions, or fears, but the same Jesus who stopped for her still stops today. He still turns, he still sees, he still speaks peace. And if this message speaks to you, take a second now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let this story find others who need to hear it. Help bring hope to someone pressing through the crowd of life, searching for a touch that changes everything. Jesus didn't have to stop. He could have let her slip away, healed, and no one would have known. But God doesn't just want to fix what's broken. He wants to restore the person behind the pain. He wants to speak identity into the places that have only known rejection. In that moment, Jesus gave her more than healing. He gave her belonging. He called her daughter, in front of the crowd that never made room for her. He declared her faith in front of the same voices that might have called her foolish. What if your healing is waiting on your reach? Not because God needs you to perform, but because your faith moves you into alignment with His power. What if it's not about shouting your need, but quietly believing He is who He says He is? Faith isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent steps through a crowd with your eyes locked on the hem of His robe. Sometimes it's not the bold who receive the miracle, but the broken who dare to reach through the fear anyway. Your reach matters, not because it earns God's attention, but because it positions you to receive what He's already willing to give. She touched the hem of His garment, and that was enough. Maybe you've been bleeding, not physically, but emotionally. Maybe life has drained you. Maybe hope feels thin, like a thread you're barely holding on to. And maybe you wonder if you're even allowed to approach God after all the years, all the failures, all the silence. But the woman's story proves that Jesus doesn't require perfection. He responds to faith, raw, trembling, halting faith. Faith that risks disappointment. Faith that dares to believe that just one touch could change everything. The crowd might not make room for you, people might not understand your fight, but faith moves through resistance. It doesn't wait for ideal conditions. It acts when something deep inside says, "This is my chance." 12 years of suffering were overturned in a second, not because she found a new doctor, not because she discovered a new formula, but because she reached out. We often look for dramatic encounters, loud moments, big signs, but some of the greatest miracles come in the quietest touches, the unseen steps of faith, the moments no one else celebrates, but heaven does. Jesus could have gone on His way, but He made space for her story to be seen, for the crowd to know that she mattered, and for generations to be reminded that faith makes a way, even when everything else has failed. This story isn't just about her, it's about you. It's about anyone who's ever felt unseen, unworthy, or unclean. It's a message that you don't need to get His attention. You already have it. You don't need the spotlight. You just need the hem of His robe. It's tempting to think that faith must be loud, bold, and public, but hers was quiet, hidden, and hesitant. Still, it moved heaven. Still, it stopped the Son of God in His tracks. Maybe your faith doesn't feel impressive. Maybe it's fragile, but fragile faith in a faithful God is more powerful than the strongest self-confidence in human solutions. You don't need to explain it all. You don't need to have the right words. You just need to move toward Him. Even if it's with trembling hands, even if it's through the fear of rejection, even if it's your last ounce of strength. That woman's touch wasn't just an act, it was a declaration, a defiant whisper of belief against all odds, a statement that said, "I believe you are enough." And He was. So today, maybe your only prayer is a reach, maybe your only hope is a whisper. That's okay. The power is not in your performance, it's in who you're reaching for. Reach anyway, through the crowd, through the doubts, through the pain, because one touch can still change everything. Jesus didn't just commend her faith, He gave her peace. Go in peace, He said. Not just physical relief, but soul-level restoration. She had come for healing. She left with wholeness. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of the one who knows your pain, sees your wounds, and speaks directly to your soul. When you reach for God, you don't just touch power, you touch presence. A presence that doesn't turn away in your brokenness, but meets you there with mercy. The woman who touched His robe teaches us that faith isn't always heroic. Sometimes it's desperate, sometimes it's messy, but when it's real, it moves heaven. You don't need a spotlight, you need surrender. You don't need perfect words. You need one step toward Him, touch the hem, speak the prayer, take the step, and then listen. Because He will call you by name, not by your condition, not by your shame. but by your identity in him. Daughter, son, beloved, and that one word will do more for your heart than any healing ever could. You may not have all the answers. You may not even feel worthy, but he is not measuring your strength. He's looking for your reach. So don't wait for perfect faith. Don't wait for the right moment. The moment is now. The invitation is open. Step forward, touch his robe, and let him turn, see you, and speak the word you've longed to hear. Because he still stops for the one who reaches. Because sometimes all it takes is one silent touch of faith to rewrite a lifetime of pain.